This is the Get a Life Podcast, Ex-Cult Conversations.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Life Podcast. I'm Lane, and I'm here today with Cheryl, Richard, Carmen, and our guest today is Peter Hart. We've got a long story that we're going to go through today, and I think we're going to be pretty excited about this one. Peter, take it away.
Okay, well, I'm 54 years old. I'm from Wellington in New Zealand, the coolest little capital in the world. And yeah, I got married at 22. My wife was 20. That's what you did back then. And yeah, when I was about 30, I was about 35-ish when Bruce came into power, and I was a good Brisbane boy, I guess, and I had no doubts about the Brisbane position. I was happy to follow the rules.
So you were a good Plymouth Brethren Christian Church member. You believed in the doctrine?
Yeah, absolutely. And I still believe in the core, the core doctrine, if you like, the core teaching. I read quite a bit, especially in my late teens, but I mostly read the old ministries, like J&D through to JT.
Okay, can you explain to the listeners who those people are and who what ministry was?
So ministry is the written writings. So in the early days, John Nelson Darby, he's the founder of the church, and his ministry was mostly writings which he wrote in his room. He had a series of different writings. He had the synopsis of the Bible, which was 5 books, where he explained the Bible teachings, and he had various other writings, notes and jottings, and discussions and apologetics, all sorts of different ones. And then Mr. Raven was the next one after him, and there again it was mostly lectures. And then James Taylor was the next one. And they were all sort of solid mainstream, I guess you'd call it, Christian teaching. And after that came JT Jr. And that's where I sort of didn't really read much of his. It never really made much sense to me. And yeah, it just didn't make sense, basically.
Did you ever get the sense reading that stuff that they weren't truly educated in the Bible?
I wouldn't say that with the earlier ones. I think they were pretty well educated. Okay. I think the earlier ones they did they were pretty well educated. Like they read the Greek and Hebrew words and they knew what they meant. I would say they were pretty well educated. But we can go into more of that later on. That's my own personal opinion, and a lot of people disagree with me. I realise that.
That's all right.
Yeah, but from JT Jr. forward, I think it started the slippery slope into becoming pretty uneducated, really. Yeah.
What made you leave?
So, well, we're jumping forward quite a bit. So yeah, I was about 35 when Bruce Hales came into power, and I saw a real difference there. So before him was John Hales, his father, and his father was quite well taught in the ministry too. And up until then, I had no doubts. But when Bruce Hales came to power, I could see a person who was quite unempathetic, and I mean, he said some things like, oh, he went to a tailor to get his shirts made. He talked about himself a lot. I go to a tailor to get my shirts made, and I thought, well, most of us can't afford to do that, And he said, I hate Australian jokes. And I thought, well, hey, the Australians are funny people. We all like laughing at the Australians. there's something wrong with a guy that can't laugh at himself.
Yeah, it's like your ego is very delicate or something.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just to be fair about the shirts, I mean, the regular stores only go up to a certain size, don't they?
Yeah, well, he was making a good point. He sort of had to go to a tailor or a tent shop, you know, an outdoor shop that sells tents. Get some armholes
Love
cut.
it. Love it.
There's a scripture about dwelling in tents, isn't there? So.
Oh, okay.
But
Sorry.
he sort of struck me as a selfish sort of person who liked himself, and he talked about money a lot. He was obviously money meant a lot, and then very soon he brought back the system days. I don't know if you've talked in the podcast a lot about the system days, but that's what his father was involved in, and his uncle back in the 60s. Where they were very hot on Bible teaching, you know, it was a big thing, but also money making. And it was at a time when JT Jr., who we talked about before, who was an alcoholic, which the brethren, of course, hotly deny, but it was at a time when he was in hospital drying out, and the Hales brothers took over worldwide. Now, Bruce Hales married JT Jr.'s daughter.
That's Bruce Senior, just to be
Bruce
clear.
Senior, that is. Yeah.
Uncle of the incumbent one.
That's right.
Okay.
So he had married JT Jr.'s daughter. So he already sort of had a foothold in there.
In the family.
Into the family. And they sort of took over universally and really pushed this, what was called the system days. And when JT Jr. came out of hospital and was sober again, he jumped onto it and took issue with it, which was a major blow to the Hales name. The Hales name was sort of trashed at that point, which Bruce would have been in his teens, and he was really offended and hurt by this.
Oh, it's always the little hurt one, right? That gets so mad, you know. Oh, of course. Sorry, go on.
So when he came into power, in the early 2000s, he brought back that whole thing, and he brought back. We started having business meetings, not in the church meetings, but outside of them. So the first one in New Zealand was in Wanganui, and I went to it. I was working for my father at the time, and Bruce was there, and he was helping the brethren how to run their businesses. And to be honest, the brethren back then were pretty naive about business, especially in New Zealand. They didn't even know what their break-even was, for instance. And these business meetings were quite helpful, and I thought they were good, helping brethren with their basic needs, how to run a business. And I actually came away from that business and told my father I was going to leave his business and start my own business, because there was 4 of us brothers in this business, which was a bit overcrowded. Like, we only had about 8 staff, so it was a bit overcrowded, and it was all mutual. And that's when I started my own business. So that's when Bruce was starting to come into to bring back the system days, but it all sort of progressed from there, and then over the next few years, he really started to justify the system days, and he started to say they should never have stopped. And of course, you can never talk against the previous leader. So he said JT Jr. was misinformed. He was told wrong information.
Oh, how clever.
Yeah. Revisionism.
Very slippery. Very slippery.
Yeah.
And both Bruce Hales and John Hales in those days were very arrogant. They were very hard on people, and they used to talk about business in the church meetings too. And they used to stand people up in those meetings. This is what I've been told, because I wasn't even born in the 60s. Oh, I was born in 68. But they used to stand people up in the meetings and ask them what their income was. And they used to ridicule brethren if their income was too low, or if it was too high and they weren't giving enough away, or
Wow.
and those sort of things. And then
So public shaming.
Yeah, public shaming. And it used to continue in the houses. And but then Bruce Hales, through the subsequent years, as I was starting to see through him, he was saying that John Hales had never done anything wrong in the system days. His father did nothing wrong. He had nothing to repent about. And that's one of the questions I ask my priests about, the priests are the people that visit me when I'm on my way out. I said, how can you say that he had nothing to repent about? And at one point, they couldn't answer that. They said, they had no answer, and they said, I'll have to come back to you about that.
And they didn't tell that.
Yeah.
Well,
So they came back to me about that, and I just got to think about what they said. It'll come back to me. But there was some sort of canned response that I was supposed to say to that.
So something about it was his excessive humility that
it was something along
agreed
those
to having
lines.
done things that he hadn't really done.
Bruce went so far, apparently recently, as to say that when his father, because his father was actually kicked out of the church, excommunicated, withdrawn from, as they call it, he went so far as to say that actually it was the reverse, and John Hales was actually withdrawing from everybody else in Sydney.
Okay.
That's not
like
that is, anyway, I don't even know what to say about that.
It was said, something like that was said where I was local. It was sort of put that, well, at that point, John Hales was the testimony and the brethren were not in the testimony.
Yes.
He was carrying everything forward, and it was actually everyone else who was wrong. So,
which is mind-blowingly stupid.
So there's been all sorts of spins put on it to justify it, but the fact is that John Hales did treat brethren wrongly. And yes, through the COVID times, of course, because I was kicked out in August 2020. So prior to that, we were listening to recordings in the COVID times, in lockdown. We would listen to recordings from the 60s. And I heard John Hales talking really rudely in a meeting to an older brother. He was telling him he needed to be a man, and he was barking at him and just talking to him. John Hales would have been, I worked out, he would have been about 42, and he's talking to a man in the 70s. And it's one thing I said to the priests. I said, he was rude, in the 60s. And apparently they told Bruce Hales what I'd said. And Bruce Hales was just shocked that I would say that about his father. He was rude.
Nice. That's awesome.
He was offended about that, but there's absolutely no doubt that they were a couple of young upstarts in the 60s.
It's just another man, right? These are all, I would believe that these were truly God's chosen individual leaders if they didn't, per se, pee or poo, if they didn't need to eat food, right? That would be, there you go, right? They're special, but they're not. These people put their pants on one leg at a time like everyone else. They were alcoholics, some of them. They were rude to people in church. They publicly shamed people for not making enough money. Oh, that sounds exactly like Jesus. It's horse crap.
Yeah, so I started to see Hales Bruce Hales earlier on. When I was, about that time, we were moving house. Our first home, we'd outgrown it, and we were moving to another part of the city. And it was a time in New Zealand where there was what was called a leaky home syndrome. There was a bunch of new houses that hadn't been built properly. So we decided we'd like to build a home, which was frowned upon in the Brethren. But I thought, well, maybe I could ask Bruce Hales if we could build a home. So I rang him up and I said, can we build a house? And John Hales's ministry index hadn't been published at that time, and I couldn't find it in his ministry. I'd heard that he said we shouldn't build houses. Brethren weren't doing it because it was hearsay. But I couldn't find it. I thought, I'll ask Bruce. I was a bit of a loose unit. And so I rang Bruce, and he said, well, we've been told, this is, listen to this, what he said back then. We've been told we shouldn't build houses because, we'll just build what we like to build, and they'll be big and exactly what we want. And that's the reason. So he said, I'm happy if you build a house, but just show the plans to two local brethren and keep it simple. That was basically what he said. And so I got off the phone. We bought a section. I told my wife what he'd said. It was clear what he said. It was obvious and straightforward. But we bought a section. We got a plan, like a book, off a local building company, and we chose a plan out of the book. And we changed the downstairs around a bit to suit the sun. Showed it to a couple of local brethren. They said, "Yeah, that looks simple enough." And we got the house built. When it was nearly finished, Bruce Hales drove past the house because there was a section down the road the brethren were thinking of buying for a city hall, and Bruce was in the city, so they drove him to look at the city hall section, and they drove past this house, and someone in the car said, "Oh, that's Peter Hart's house," and Bruce said, "I didn't say Peter Hart could build a house." And so this was relayed to me afterwards, and I got shock of my life, and my wife, and we were both upset about it because, and of course all the brethren knew about it within like about 2 hours. Because they all had their noses put out of joint that I was building a house because no one else had ever built a house in the last few years because you weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
And even people very close to me, my own family said, after that they said, you must have misunderstood what Bruce said to you. And
meanwhile,
and I was
just a liar.
Yeah, or they didn't tell me I was a liar, but I was just dirt.
No, he's the liar. I'm saying Bruce Hales the liar.
Yeah.
He tells you one thing, then he lies about it. That's normal for him.
I didn't think of him as a liar, but what I thought was he doesn't give a damn for another person's feelings.
Yeah.
He didn't sort of think when he opened his mouth to say, I didn't tell Peter Hart he built a house. He didn't stop to think that, well, maybe I did say it and I forgot. Maybe I shouldn't open my mouth and say I didn't tell him to build a house. Maybe I should just think before I open my mouth.
He's not a kind
because
person.
It's going to put
neither him or his father were nice people. Sorry. Bruce Hales is not a nice person. Like, they're not kind, gentle, caring leaders. Him or his father. They were assholes.
Yeah. So my impression was that he's not empathetic. He doesn't give a damn for another person's feelings.
Yeah. That shouldn't be a leader of a Christian church.
No.
I'm mind blown right now. I don't even know what to say. I did not know that this was a rule. I can't believe we're having this conversation. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I feel like an outsider right now listening to this podcast, and my mind is blown that there is people asking Bruce if they can build a house. Do you realize like how crazy this sounds?
He controls everything.
I'm like, I didn't know this was a rule.
And
I'm
now his Gareth Hales owns a what? Was it a $9 million or $7 million house?
It's 9.5 Australian, which would be about 6 million, 7 million American.
Okay, $6-7 million house, and
That's
he was
weekend house.
telling Peter to keep his house simple.
And this what year was this?
The
What year was this,
hypocrisy.
Peter?
About 2002, I think.
2002.
Just when he came to power.
So
Yeah.
am I just maybe I never, is this always been a rule? Like, has this has always been a rule? I did not know.
Around about then or after then, there was a rule that you couldn't build a house. So I think it was after that. Yeah, that's right.
What was the reasoning behind it?
So after that, the ministry index came out with John Hale's ministry, and he had said quite plainly you shouldn't build a house. So after that, the rule became no, you should not build a house. That was a blanket rule. And of course, I had built a house, so I was a black sheep. And apparently, Bruce hadn't said I should build a house. I had misunderstood him, and I was just a black sheep. But I didn't actually sell the house. I asked a brother with a level head. There was one or two of them in Wellington.
So hold on,
if I should sell the house, and he said, "No, don't sell it. Just live in it."
Yeah.
I got a question though. Wasn't Jesus a carpenter?
Yeah.
I trust Lane.
What would we do without Lane's spiritual insight?
Right?
I'm just your local atheist.
Yeah, so
It's
after
very
that,
odd because Bruce Hales accused me of building my own house. One phone call I had with him after I had that car accident, he said, "You built your own house," and it wasn't true at all. There's not a grain of truth in it. I didn't bother to contradict him because generally contradicting Bruce doesn't go well for you. But yeah, it seems to be, some weird thing he has. If you haven't built your own house, he tells you have, and if you have, he tells you he didn't give you permission, so you can't really win, can you?
And I don't understand the reason either, because he's like, you'll like it too much. Like, you can't have something if you want it too much. So it has to be something you only kind of want, but you can buy a $7 million house. I'm so confused.
Well, no, the way it
I'll
was
just
explained to us. Sorry.
Go ahead, Peter.
Go on, Peter.
Go ahead, Peter.
No, I was just going to take you through the process that followed on from me building a house and the process over the next few years. So after I built the house, that you weren't allowed to build houses, and but then a rule came in that you could buy a house and you could alter it. Okay, and so that's what brethren that wanted to build houses. That's what they did. They built a house and they altered it, but you could leave one. You could demolish it, but you had to leave one wall standing. I'm not joking.
Yeah. In Vancouver, they did that. They bought these houses because they wanted these houses close to the airport and close to the meeting room, and they would leave one wall standing and then rebuild the whole house around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was.
Who gets mad if you take that wall down? Is he cares about walls? Walls. This is actually new. Like, I was in for 18 years and I didn't know about this.
I had no idea about this either. No idea.
But, like,
What would be
the biblical teaching that supports the one wall?
Well, because John Hale said you shouldn't build a house, so that was the technical way of getting around it, that you leave a wall standing. I suppose if you just left a stud standing like 4 inches long, I suppose it's a wall.
Yeah, right? Could a support beam, does that count? Or am I getting kind of sinful? This is mind-blowing.
Wow, yeah, my mind's blown.
And so then roll it on a couple of years, and you've got these rich brethren, buying an old house on a section. They leave one stud standing, and they build their dream home. And then roll it on a couple of years, and then Bruce, the Lord had moved on, and turned the corner, and you could build a house after that. But you had to bring it up in the care meeting. You had to tell the brethren in the care meeting that you were building a house. And I'm not joking again. And so you had brethren saying in the care meeting that I'm building a house on such a site, and another brother would say into the microphone that yes, so and so's spoken with me, and the local brethren are happy about it.
Hypothetically, if Jesus is watching these care meetings, he's sleeping. This is the most boring. Like, who cares about what does that have to do with the Bible teachings? It just like, what?
You know what? It kind of makes me sad. Like, I'm going back to I think it was Lara Payne's podcast, right? Where she asked to bring up her sexual abuse in a care meeting and was denied it. But yet they bring up building homes in a care meeting. It's just, I had no, and we were totally sidetracking. I apologize, Peter, but I'm just literally, I did not know that this was a rule, and my mind is just having to catch up with everything you're saying and digest this,
process it.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Peter.
Stupid. It's so stupid because that only lasted like 6 months. And then the building house thing had really taken off, and brethren building houses fed out. But, like, first of all, it had to be simple. Then it didn't have to be simple. And now brethren are building houses like 600 square meters is pretty normal. It's,
yeah,
6,000 square feet.
My brother's is 7,500 square feet.
Yeah, I believe that.
Like,
I've heard that Bruce Hales' house is 1,000 square meters.
Square meters.
Sure or not. Oh, Gareth's is bigger than his.
Which one? His new one or his present one?
His townhouse, the way. The city house.
The weekday one,
not the weekend house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of them have got their houses so big they're having to hire housekeepers because their wives can't clean them all.
Oh, bet you need a ride-on vacuum cleaner, wouldn't you?
Well, how many mornings are they hung over?
Sorry, what was that?
I just asking how many mornings are they hung over?
Yeah,
that's true too. Yeah.
That cuts into the cleaning. Okay, let's go back on track. Let's go back to your leading up to leaving.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a incident. Another incident I had, which was after that, is a brother was taking a meeting in Wellington, and he read the scripture in Matthew 18, verse 20. It says, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered together unto my name, there am I in the midst of them." And he said that scripture only applies to the brethren. The Lord wouldn't go to any other gathering of men. And I knew this was a bit of a thing in the brethren. And I very bravely or stupidly said in that meeting, it was a city meeting with 380 brethren there. I very stupidly said, how can we say that? The Lord will go where he wants to go. Well, we can't limit the Lord. And the meeting just dissolved. The meeting hardly started, and it just sort of stopped. And the rest of the meeting was just everyone throwing bricks at me from all over the room.
Oh.
And one brother said, "You need to stop being against Bruce Hales. You need to stop your behaviour, the way that you're against the brethren, and all this. There's just these rocks being thrown at me in the meeting." And my wife was upset. She was crying, and it was
You're
really
being publicly attacked.
I went home that night. It was my job to find preachers that night. For the next day, I went to a brother after meeting. He said, "Look, can you do this for me?" He said, "Yeah, sure." And I went home. I didn't sleep a wink that night.
With that note.
It was pretty shocking. And of course I got a priestly visit after that. I had to apologise or get shut up. I'm sure I would have got shut up if I hadn't apologised.
But you were right.
Yeah, I knew I was right. And what's more, I knew I had ministry from J&D and FER and JT to support it in black and white, which I brought up in this Pressy visit. I had the script, I had the references there, and I said, look, this is exactly what they said. It's there in black and white. And they said, yeah, but Bruce Hales said this. And so that was the end of it.
Yeah.
And I was in no financial position, or I just didn't feel I was ready to get kicked out.
Yeah.
At that stage. That was about 10 years before I did get kicked out finally.
So you were kind of questioning the leader though for quite a few years before you actually left or got kicked out.
Yeah, well, about from about that time on, I would pray privately that Bruce Hales would get exposed. I knew he was no good.
Yeah.
I don't want full exposure. It'd be kind of gross to see him fully exposed.
And in the meetings, I in the prayer meeting on Monday night, I had to pray for Bruce Hales because if you didn't, you would get asked why don't you pray for Bruce Hales?
Yeah.
So I would, about every second Monday night, I would pray for him, but that was it. I just prayed for Bruce Hales. I wouldn't go on with all the other stuff. Pray for our beloved brother; he'll be strengthened. And I can't remember all the.
Let's tell the listeners what
Bruce Hales.
Let's tell the listeners what a prayer meeting was. So Monday night in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, they go to church 365 days a year. Monday night is the prayer meeting, they call it. And that's where all the men ranging from age even as young as 12 years old.
Yeah, 12 you have to start. Yeah.
And the church, the local city will split up into small groups of about 50. And then the men will get up one at a time and all have to pray out loud into a mic. Kind of weird. And if you start praying for weird things like celebrities, or if you pray for bin Laden getting caught, I did that once. They don't like that. You have to pray you have to like stick to the script. So it's got to be, it sounds like this: God and Father, pray for, Mr. Bruce or Bruce Hales or Mr. Hales, whichever you prefer. And then you'd hit like your family. You'd be like Dad and Mommy and like, this person, and you'd name all the sick people. And then you'd be like, there'll be like good government. Sometimes you pray for like good government, and that would get you a couple brownie points. And then you'd be like, name of the Lord Jesus Christ, amen, as fast as you can. Or you just be like, amen. And that was funny. Sometimes you get a laugh after that one.
That's right. That's the prayer meeting. Yep.
It's all right, my rants.
So another thing is, around about that time, I was printing the Brethren Directory. I'm a printer. I was back then. And I was printing the Brethren Directory, the New Zealand wide one. It was a spiral bound directory with the phone numbers in. We'll just go back a little bit. In 2005, the election campaign, there were 7 brothers who were campaigning the government, and it was all supposed to be secret, which was quite stupid, really. It was done all over the world, but they hired houses so they could register their name at these hired houses. So it was all secret, but of course it all got out and hit the media, and the media exposed it. And they were exposed as a secret 7. And
what were they fighting against? It was same-sex marriage, wasn't it?
Oh no, this was campaigning for a new government.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is campaigning. Yeah. Gotcha.
I can't remember what government was in, but they were campaigning for a particular government.
It was Helen Clark with Labour, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, they were campaigning for the national.
It was Don Brash for National Party, which is like the right-wing party.
That's right.
And they wanted Brash in and Clark out because she was too far left for their liking.
Yeah. So. And about the time just before they were campaigning, just before Bruce Hales came to Wellington fellowship meetings, and these 7 brothers met Bruce Hales in a house in Wellington, at the leading brother's house, and then when it all hit the fan, the media, they told the media, it was published in the newspaper, they told the media that they had no instructions from Australia. It was completely their own exercise as concerned businessmen. They were financing it. It had nothing to do with the church. And then afterwards, after it all sort of was all over, there was this new thing called the SIS, Strategic Information Services, they called it, a newsletter which was put out by a different group of brethren, which every business was expected to subscribe to. And I was sent an email. There was, I think, something like $300 a month. You could subscribe to this useless information sheet.
That's a lot of money.
Sorry?
That's a lot of money for something so silly.
So something you wouldn't even read. And I returned the email and said, this sounds, is this for financing the campaign? Because the campaign cost something like 1.2 or 1.6 million or something. And I asked them point blank, is this for financing the campaign? Because I was keeping them honest. They had told the media that they were financing it themselves, and it had nothing to do with the church. And very mysteriously, about 2 weeks later, I was asked to give back all the files for the business, for the Brethren directory that I had.
Huh. So
They
started getting nervous.
Me to print it.
Yeah, they didn't like that question. Presumably, they never actually answered you.
So, sorry, what was that?
They never actually admitted that it was for financing the campaign, I presume.
No, it obviously was, yeah. So I was sort of on the watch list, from way back.
Mm.
Yeah. So, I had a couple of other things which I wasn't happy about. Another interesting thing that happened was was in my business. As I said, I started my own business. And it was printing, but then I branched off into the printing was sort of changing. It was going digital, and we were just getting into computers then. But before we got into computers, I'd already seen that printing was getting more and more difficult. So I bought a couple of businesses importing CD and DVD cases, and also started printing CDs and DVDs. And this was before the Brethren had computers. So I didn't actually have to have a computer to duplicate CDs and DVDs. It was just standalone machines. But I sort of had to keep it hush-hush. And my dad said to me, he said, look, I don't mind what you're doing, but the Brethren aren't going to like it.
My grandma was so against CDs when they came out. Because remember when they would they'd send things in the mail that had a CD and it was like advertising and stuff on the CDs. Well, my grandma would break them and then hang them in pieces from the tree to scare away crows or something.
Oh, yeah, the mirror works. Yeah,
that's all they're good for. That's all those memory discs are good for.
White folks would be good for that, wouldn't they?
I don't know what's wrong with digital media, but they were so scared of it at first. You thought that like Satan himself had designed it.
Yeah. So anyway, one of my main customers, one of my big customers was a nationwide church called the Arise Church in New Zealand, which was an evangelical Pentecostal church. And so they had good, solid Christian sermons. And I used to listen to these, which was forbidden, of course. I'd listen to them in the car, and that was my first sort of eye-opener to the fact that the Brethren preachings are just simply lame. And
the gobbledygook.
Or very boring. And these people out there that preach, they're interesting and they've got good teaching. And hey, there's lots of decent Christians out there. And yeah, I listened to this stuff a lot. So that was a real eye-opener to me. And yeah, so going forward in my business, I branched off from that. The CD and DVD stuff was going quite well. I branched off into manufacturing digital touchscreens, which went quite well. It was before the bulk manufacturer of iPads and that sort of stuff. So these are touchscreens for retail stores for advertising. And that branched into more the medical side of stuff. I got into manufacturing medical stuff for operating theatres.
Okay.
And that was a mistake. That was a bad decision. It was too big, and I got into financial difficulty. And if you ever get into financial difficulty in the brethren, they never forget it. It's talked about, it's gossiped about, and there was a time after the GFC, the global financial crisis, where Bruce Hales decided to have a look at all the brethren businesses worldwide that were in trouble. And I was one of them. So my books were sent over to Bruce Hales, and there was a couple of brothers from New Zealand that were present when they were looked at. And some instructions came back from Bruce Hales about what I was to do. And it was really bad advice. It was just really dumb. So I thought, well, what I'm going to do is just, I won't just throw the toys out of the cot. I won't say anything. I won't sort of say, no, I'm not going to do this. I thought I'll just do it really slow, and hope everyone forgets about it. So that's what I did. So over the course of the next probably 2 years, I managed to pull that business around and sell it, that side of the business. And I sold that side of the business, and the good side of the business has gone really well ever since, and completely turned it around. But that's a bit like what I came across with the brethren, is that they couldn't sort of delve into, they had to sort of look at the thing as a whole. I was told to sell the whole business as it is, and I would have come at it with absolutely nothing. The whole thing, I would have worked for a brother, I would have had no money, worked for a brother and basically been locked into the brethren with no money. But I did it my own way, and or the common sense way, I should say, and came out on top. So soon after that, one of my sons was married, and he wanted to, he got married, and he had a stink job in Wellington with a local brother in Wellington, and he needed to change his job. And I'd sold this business, so I had spare capacity to employ him, start another business to employ him. I only had a small business at that stage, a good small business, which I couldn't really employ him in my current business, so I had to start another business to employ him. I had the money to do that, and we put together a business plan. He was keen to work for me. It was a good, solid plan. I spoke to a couple of brothers about it. They both said no. One brother said, no, you need $2 million to start a business. And I said, rubbish. I said, you can start a business with $45. All you need is a bucket and a window cleaning brush. You can start a business.
Yeah. What did he say to that?
Said, no, Bruce Hales said you need $2 million to start a business. So you can't start a business for your son. And in
This
the
is
upshot,
insane.
yeah, my son wanted to work for me. You know, he couldn't start a business himself because he was too young, and he had a new house with a big mortgage. So in the end, he had married a girl from Australia, and in the end, he got offered a job in Australia. And in the end, he moved to Australia. You know, we were really upset. It was the first married son. They were expecting their first child, so first grandchild. There was a lot of tears, and they were moving to Australia. And I had to sign a piece of paper by the brethren to say I was happy for him to move to Australia, so I wouldn't cause any trouble.
So you were forced to sign something?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's not legal.
to say I was happy about it.
Wow.
Because I tried to employ him and was refused.
Pressuring someone into signing something is not legal.
I want to remind our viewers, you'll remember a while back, we did some podcasts with Candleland, and Merrick Grimshaw was their spokesperson, had come out with some quotes in this Candleland through our trio podcast through them. So I just want to this is a perfect time. I just want to bring this up. PBC spokesperson Merrick Grimshaw tells us that church member companies are under no obligation to join UBT, and that they are able to do business with whomever they choose. They also tell us that the church has no legal, financial, or any other interest in its members' business.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that no obligation, but I didn't join UBT. I refused to because I had no time for their stuff and I had no money for it, especially when I was struggling. And yet I was known over the country as being against UBT because I wouldn't join. And it was spoken against behind my back and despised for it. But yeah, there's no obligation.
Yeah. I mean, this is why we have these conversations to get, like, you have so many stories, Peter. Like, there's just so much inside you, and it's recent, right? I mean, you just left, you just left in 2020? Is that when you left in 2020?
Yeah.
Like, that's why I wanted to bring in some of this current stuff that Merrick Grimshaw is reporting, is because we're not applying this to something 30 years ago, right? We're applying this to Peter's current situation that has happened within the last how many years.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much to talk about. We've been talking for 45 minutes already.
Oh, we could keep on going.
I'm only like a quarter of the way through what there is to talk about.
That's okay. Keep going.
But yeah. But just to wind it forward, wind it forward to about June 2020, my wife said to me, look, you've got to talk to the brethren about your problems. She said to me, you're not reading the white books. And I said to her, look, they just don't make sense. And she was horrified that I would say that. And she said, no, you've got to talk to them. I said, well, I don't want to, because I knew what would happen.
Yeah.
I knew, but this was 10 years or 12 years after that other incident when I'd come up against the wall before, when I knew I couldn't leave, but I was in a different place now. And I just felt I just couldn't just brush over things again. And she insisted on it, and bless her soul, she thought I would get help. I don't think she thought it would end like this. And so first of all, since she said, since I'd said the white books don't make sense, I took them on a theological point. I said, okay, well, so I told her brother, I rang up her brother and said, look, my wife wants me to talk to you. I told her the white books don't make sense. And she said, okay, well, I'll come around and bring another brother. And so they said, okay, what's not making sense? And I said, well, Bruce Hales says that in his ministry that Jesus was sent to the earth. And there was an issue, I won't spend too long on this, but it's all pretty theological. But there was an issue in 1923 with JT called the
Eternal Son.
That's right, eternal sonship of Christ. Yeah. Where JT made it clear that in the past eternity, Jesus was God, and so he decided to come to earth himself. He wasn't sent to earth. He decided to come of his own free will. And here's Bruce Hales saying, on several occasions, saying Jesus was sent to the earth. And so we had some quite long discussions about that. And these brothers were sort of panel beating Bruce's words to fit what JT had said. And it was just a waste of time. And then it turned into talking about other things. I also said about them saying that every single word that comes out of Bruce's mouth is Christ's words. I said I disagree with that.
Even when he grunts and sneezes? Even when he grunts and sneezes?
Or even when he called someone a bastard, when he called Braden Simmons a bastard in the meeting, I said to them about that. And
or tell someone to eat rat poison? Yeah,
I said, well, they said, oh, well, Paul used the word bastard in scripture. And I said, yeah, but he used it in the sense of what the word means, as an illegitimate son. Not in a derogatory term. I mean, everyone knows who Braden Simmons' father is.
Yeah.
And they didn't have an answer for that. And we talked about other things too, about, Bruce Hales liking money and surrounding himself with the best of everything. And they said, oh, money means absolutely nothing to Bruce Hales.
That's hilarious.
Comedians.
And I said that in the recordings, John Hales was rude. So I sort of let it rip, really. I let all my feelings out.
And they quickly probably confined you after that?
We had a total of, I think, 4 priestlings, I think. And then we started talking about the court cases. I'd found out about the court cases, which I wasn't supposed to do. And the court cases being Peter Harrison and Braden's court case. And so we talked about those. And then I refused to have any more priestly visits. And then they said, oh, can we just have a 5-minute visit? And so then I knew, well, that was to shut me down.
Yeah.
And then my mum rang me. So it was in the morning, they rang for that. And they said, so we arranged for priestly visit in the afternoon. And then my mum rang me up and she said, can't you just stay? She said.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing like that feeling when the family just begs you.
Especially a mom, leave. It's the hardest one to get over.
Yeah.
It's the hardest one to get over.
Yep. So we had our 5-minute visit. And they shut me up for 2 things: for talking against the man of God and for talking to a person that was not in the fellowship and not telling them who it is. That was the 2 things.
So right there you have it, listeners. If you question anything, even if it blatantly doesn't make sense, even if you can see that it's wrong or even immoral, you still have to blindly follow. And soon as you question, you're done.
I think I mean, Carmen can attest to this because she's gone an excellent church. But when you think of Christianity, the first word that comes to me would be compassion, would be kindness, would be caring, would be
altruism.
Yeah, there's everything coming together out of love, right? And if you have a group that is wanting to be called a mainstream Christian church, those members should be able to go to somebody with their issues and be compassionately welcomed, to be, and it not be about a man of God. Everything should turn back to the Bible, right? It should go back to the teachings of the Bible, not the teachings of a man of God.
How weak is your foundation when you can't stand up to the teeniest ridicule?
Yeah, well, that's what all this came back to Bruce Hales, and that's really what I was shut up for, was questioning the man of God.
Which is hilarious. Like, you can't question this guy. You know why, though? Is because if he allowed anyone to question him, he wouldn't be able to have answers. He's not intelligent enough. He's not smart enough to be able to have even basic questions about the Bible. He would probably fail, right? So he's going, are you questioning me? Are you questioning my Father? And how he ups his own ego, right? How he strokes his ego is by talking about his Father being this man that couldn't make a mistake and everything, right? He's brushing himself, right? He's saying that he's incapable of making mistakes. He's just incapable of questioning him. And it's all just so culty. And once you take a look outside the brethren for the first time, when you open your eyes to the world, you realize that they're just another cult. Like all the other.
And of course, they kept on trying to trip me up. They asked what I thought of Aberdeen. So I just fudged my way through that one. And
you just lied?
Well, I hadn't sort of thought about that at that stage. And they asked me, they kept on trying to get me on some immoral thing. They kept on saying, there must be some immoral thing. Are you going on with some sort of sin? I said, no, I'm squeaky clean. But there must be something in your history. There must be something that you're hiding because you're questioning the man of God. There must, they said it always comes back to some immoral thing that someone's going on with. I said, well, tell me what it is.
These people jump to conclusions faster than anybody. They make massive, massive jumps and gaps and just blame for no reason. It's really pathetic.
It's very interesting you say that, because when I was in trouble and they were questioning me, it was very much the same line. They were saying, oh, you must have done something. And they came up with this idea that I'd cheated on my wife, which is completely false, totally unrelated to anything that I had done. I have no idea where it even came from. And they kept pressing this. And it was kind of, you realize after a while that it was the same kind of reasoning, that it's because I'd had a really bad motor accident. And the kind of reasoning was, well, there's terrible things happen to you, so you must have done something wrong because God's obviously punishing you for something.
But that is just a disgusting way to think.
Yeah, they pushed it so hard. I seriously considered admitting to it, even though it wasn't true at all, because I could see that they weren't going to let me back with my family until I'd confessed whatever they wanted me to confess to.
Yeah.
While we're in here talking again, so I have my list of Merrick Grimshaw's quotes handy today. Here's another quote he said. The PBCC also denies that they have a formal hierarchy. However, their website lists Bruce Hales as the church's most senior leader.
This is such a joke. Such a joke. There's such a hierarchy. And guess who's waking his way up the ladder? My little brother, Jim Admiral, is in Australia right now working with Gareth and Dean and Charles Hales. And they're getting ready to do a big UBT, probably fundraising of some kind. So they have a massive hierarchy. That's total bullcrap. And my older brother is also going up in the hierarchy, Lee Admiral. And I've got a story for you guys today. So back in, I guess, November is when Americans have their Thanksgiving. And my younger brother, Jim, decides to have a massive, massive Thanksgiving party. Invites Roy Symington's widow, I forget her name, Rhoda Markham, So they have this huge, my brother Lee's there, my dad's there. They have this massive Thanksgiving party in a tent out back. They've got a bar, they've got a menu. It's nuts, right? Then, like literally, I think it was like a week or two ago, a letter gets read out in all of North America stating that there's been instances of the brethren breakdown in something in fellowship and along the lines of celebrating worldly holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. Okay, right in there. But are you ready for it? Guess who signed the bottom of the letter? Lee Matthew Admiral. My brother is the biggest fucking hypocrite ever. Oh.
Wow. Yeah. So Peter, did you leave with your family? I don't know your whole story. Like when you got excommunicated, like did your wife come with you?
No, she was absolutely so right through the whole time she has been absolutely with Bruce Hales the whole time. We've had very careful discussions about Bruce in the past. I've had sort of tiptoe around that subject. No, there's no way that she was very, very loyal to Bruce Hales. So she was extremely upset. She was crying especially through the last couple of interviews the whole time.
Wow.
So I've got 5 children and 3 grandchildren. I haven't been told about the last one, so I don't know her name.
That's heartbreaking. See, they weaponize the family against, and then they claim that it's the family's choice and it's not a brethren direction. We know that it's directed by the brethren. You know,
it's directed by Bruce Hales.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If they just had open hearts, if they were even a teeny bit Christian, they would communicate with people regardless of judgment. Instead, they hold judgment and think that they know you, think they know about your life, and then they don't even tell you when you have a grandchild. That's disgusting. Yeah. That's disgusting.
Yeah. So, and even the Brisbane of Wellington. I mean, my daughter was 18 when I was shut up. She was really upset that Friday afternoon with that 5-minute visit. My wife rang her and told her she left work like straight away. She was so upset. And she actually, her boss complained 4 weeks later that she was underperforming at work. And then complained again, and so she left her job. She was so upset. And my son, the next one up from there, so I lived at home for 3 months. After I shut up, he came. I was working at home because I only worked part-time. At that stage, I'd sold half my business already, so I was at home. And he came home from work one day upset. I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Oh, work's not going well." And so I got straight on the phone I didn't phone him, I emailed the priest straight away and said, "You got to sort this out. My son's upset. I can't talk to him. I'm not allowed to talk to him too much. So you got to he's having problems with work. You got to sort this out." As a result, he got put off from his work. And they weren't very sympathetic.
Clearly.
It was really, really hard on my kids.
So they take it out.
Those 2 younger ones.
So that's clear evidence that the church punishes the family, even for, someone leaving the church. You know what I mean? Even though the family did nothing wrong.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of brethren are kind to them, but there's also ones that aren't sympathetic. And of course, in their businesses, this boss was worried about my daughter underperforming. Well, what an asshole. I mean,
that's cruel.
What do you
Of course she's
expect? Yeah.
underperforming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same experience when I was in trouble. Two of my children in succession were, one was demoted and one was taken out of the business. And in hindsight, I think it was a deliberate strategy from a high level to put more and more pressure on me to try and force me to either leave or to kind of repent and rejoin. When they've got you in that shut up position, they try and put as much stress on you as possible. The kind of theory is that if they get you sufficiently stressed, you will actually kind of flip and convert, or else get out of their hair. I believe it's very deliberate.
It is.
Yeah.
Let's read them. If there's any brethren listening, I just want to remind you of a little scripture here. If you're thinking about punishing people, fathers shall not be put to death for the sons, neither shall the sons be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. That's Deuteronomy 24:16. You can fact check me if you don't believe me. I've been doing a little Bible research. So there is absolutely no excuse for you to punish people when someone else leaves. That is just so wrong and not even close to what they preach in Christianity. Like, they're so far from it.
Yeah, and so I followed up an email to these priests afterwards saying that I'm concerned about my family's health, because I was concerned about my wife's health and my children's health. All three children that were living at home, I was concerned about their mental health. And I emailed them and asked them about it, about quite a few things. And their response to the one about the mental health was that if they become extremely unwell, you'll hear about it. So that was it. So basically, if they commit suicide, I'll hear about it. Yeah, great.
That's evil.
My heart just breaks for you, Peter, like, because it's just so still new. Like, how are you doing now? Like how do you cope with everything? Because I mean, it takes years to start unraveling everything and digest, and it's hard. I can't even imagine having kids and grandkids and an ex-wife, like it's still in there. Like, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm actually doing amazingly well. I was able to keep the business, and the business that I kept has gone really, really well since. It's going 4 times better than when it was in there. So I've only just started working full time again. Like for the first couple of years, I couldn't sort of concentrate enough. I just had to look after myself.
Yeah.
And just work when I felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just, a typical day, I'd just go out for a coffee and maybe not even work that day, because I just couldn't push myself. It had to really nurse myself along. But no, I'm doing really well. Yeah.
If your kids were to watch this, what would you say to them?
Well, I think my kids know I love them. I'm sure they do. And I send them a birthday greeting every birthday. And about half of them return it nicely, and the other half don't. But there's no ill feelings there at all, because I know they feel they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course, they're welcome to contact me anytime, and they know that. And
and to experience the real what freedom is in Christianity.
Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
It is. Yeah.
Peter, what's some of the first things that you tried when you left?
Well, I went to another church straight away. I went to Lindy's church.
Did it feel a lot better, a little more happy?
Well, the first thing I noticed was, so Lindy's a pastor and her husband, and there was 2 sets of pastors at the church, and so they sort of take turns the pastors that aren't on that week, they sit up the back somewhere, and the people just sit all over the place, and there's no hierarchy, and there's no important people there, and they're also relaxed, and you come as you are, and the people are there because they want to be there.
Yeah.
You know, not because they have to be.
And they actually welcome sinners there,
Yeah.
contrary to the Plymouth Brethren, you know?
They don't say they're pure and, oh, we can't have that person here.
Right.
Yeah. And of course I went to the movie theatre. I still haven't gone bowling, Tenpin bowling. That's still on my to-do list.
Did you ever have that moment when you sat down in church where you're like, wait, they're not supposed to know this? Like, there was so much that we were told that the world didn't know. And there was a couple times where I sat in church and I went, wait, they're not supposed to know this. That was just for us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And of course, they often quote that scripture, where two or three are gathered together unto me, there am I in the midst of them. And they all believe it. And that's what J&D said. He said people everywhere quote that scripture, and they believe it, and it's true for them. Yeah.
That's incredible.
I was made to repent and withdraw that remark I said, even though J&D had said it.
See, it's just this stark difference, right? And that's what I always like getting this across to those that are in there that listen, is that what you are experiencing is not Christianity. It's not Christianity.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Peter. I know you have like tons of stories in you, and you know, we could sit here for hours upon hours hearing your stories, and we obviously will bring you back on. And,
there's a lot more to say. I mean, I had a bit to do with the fellowship meetings in Wellington. I don't know why, because I was an outcast, but I had a bit to do behind the scenes. I had a bit to do behind the scenes with them, and there's all sorts of shit went on. And there's a lot of stories.
You want to tell that story before you go?
Oh no, it's take too long.
It takes too long. Okay. Stay tuned, people, for
part 2
story time with Peter. Okay, well, we sure appreciate you joining us and letting us come into your world for an hour and a bit. And
I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and my heart
goes out to you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, until next time.
I've got no regrets at all.
No, I bet you don't.
I struggled with guilt for the first year and a bit, because I could have, like my mum said to me, can't you just stay? And I could have stayed, I guess, but I would have had to lie.
Yeah.
You know, I would have had to say, no, John Hales wasn't rude. And yes, every word that comes out of Bruce Hales' mouth is from the Lord. And, you know, but I couldn't live with that.
You'd have to live a lie, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And what a gift from a father, like thinking of yourself as a father, what a gift to your children to know when and how to stand up and make a stance for change, right? That's what you did. Right. And yes, it cost you a lot of grief. You had to sacrifice a lot, but you showed them the way. You literally showed them the way out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the biggest gift you could ever give your family.
Yeah. I feel bad for them, and that they'll be fed up that I'm evil. I know, but I really think that underneath, they don't think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of how I believe compassion works. I believe eventually compassion will seep through these walls of lies and walls of injustice. I believe compassion will always work its way through. It just takes time. We need to be persistent. I think we need to, in doing what we're doing, being vulnerable the way that we're being vulnerable, and allowing people to all come forward and show our truth in this way, that we aren't bad people. We're not opposers. We're not evil. We simply...
I'm an opposer. I'm sorry. I'm a huge opposer. Huge opposer.
So am I, Lane. Yeah.
Rock and roll.
They view us, right? They view us as this group of people that are just opposing Bruce Hales's word, which that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is show these people that what you're in is not a Christian church. That's not a Christian church. You are not in what you think you're in.
Yeah. I think going back, and some people disagree with me, but I think going back to the 50s, I think it was a pretty mainstream Christian church. It's where they brought in the extreme separation. They back then they started to split husbands and wives. Back in the late 50s, JT Jr. said if a wife is not a believer, but the husband is, but like if a wife doesn't break bread in the bedroom, but the husband does, then they need to split.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think my main goal, everybody asks me, like, what's your end goal, Cheryl? Like, what do you want to do? And it is, I just want to take the cult out of the church.
Yeah.
It might not happen in my lifetime, but at least we started it. And for the generations to continue it, right? Like that is the key, is to start something where the train is rolling along enough that it reaches a destination. And that's my destination, is to take the cult out of the church, so that my family and my nieces and my nephews, everybody who's in there, gets to experience what a real Christian church should be.
Yeah. And while it's a cult, they'll cover up things.
Yeah.
Because that's what I know. While they're trying to say it's a pure position, they have to cover up things to give that appearance.
Yeah. And Bruce is he's very smart at what he's doing. And I believe he's fully aware of what he's doing. I fully believe he's aware of what he's doing.
I do too.
There's no way that someone... Yeah.
That's something I wondered about for years, is does he know what he's doing? And now
he has to. There's no way.
I asked a sociology professor once at the University of Waterloo that question. I said, does he, the leader, really believe their own story? And he's like, well, it's hard to say. It's like, it's kind of like the salesman coming out to pitch his sales team, right? And he has to tell his sales team, he's like, guys, come on, we got the best widget, right? Like our widget is better than all the other widgets. Does he really go back after and be like, we definitely have the best product? Maybe, but you know what I mean? He's really just trying to convince, because that helps the sales, right?
Yeah.
Whether he fully believes it or not it's doubtful. I mean, come on. The universe is infinite as far as they've measured, infinite. And he really thinks the creator of the infinite universe chose him for a special mission? Come on. That's the worst comic book story ever. It's just a terrible, come on. Yes, I was chosen out of 14.4 billion years the universe has been around. The creator chose me for a special mission.
I mean, even if you put him in a cape and blue tights, he still wouldn't look like a superhero, would he?
Yeah.
That's what we needed to end on.
One little piece of advice: those little cards that you send, don't ever stop sending them. I've heard so many stories of kids that have collected all of those cards that a parent has sent, and then on that one hard day, pulled that pile of cards out and said, this is where I want to go. Hard as it is at the moment, when you get some of those cards sent back, it's worth every minute.
Yeah. That's good. Okay. Well, let's
end it
here. Yeah. And we know Peter will be on again. Have not even a question about that. Anyhow, thanks everyone for joining us. Take care, everybody.
To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me.